Our story begins more than 100 years ago, in the spring of the year 1869, when Sweden and Norway were joined together in a union under the reign of His Majesty King Charles XV. An oppressive famine had struck the land the 2 years previous, and it was perhaps this ordeal that helped push a young 24-year-old named Danielson to leave family and friends in the Norr parish of Värmland province and head north with his wife, Kajsa Andersdotter, to find a new life.
They traveled some 50 miles through the stony forest, for Värmland had little else at the time, until they came to a long, still lake called Rutnen, and at the head of that lake lay the quiet village of Udheden, known also as Gräsmark, which employed the newcomer as a soldier, a job he was to hold for the next 27 years. Daniel and Kajsa were given this home to live in, and a few small fields nearby, and it was here that their 5 children were born: Anna, Hannah, Johann, Gustav, and Oscar.
The soldiers of that time were paid not by the national government, but by each small locality. And such was the tie of Daniel Eriksson to the village of Udheden that he even changed his name to Daniel Udman. His salary, however, was hardly impressive, and was improved only a little at harvest time by bags of corn from the Udheden farmers, and occasionally the loan of a horse for bringing in the crops. The Udmans also had 2 cows, a pig, and some chickens.
They worshipped here at the Gräsmark Kyrka, a picturesque landmark beside the lake. It was here that the Udman children were baptized and confirmed. Among their friends at the church was a young girl named Caroline Nilsdotter, and her sister Christina and brother Nils, who came from a very poor home where the father was most often absent and the mother supported the family by taking in washings and doing other domestic work. But on Sundays they came and forgot the burdens of the week in the richness of the liturgy of the state church. By the coming of the 1890s, however, there were changes afoot in this quiet land, changes that the Udmans and their friends could not ignore. A spiritual awakening had begun, with Christians meeting together in homes to explore the Scriptures informally and learn for themselves the meaning of individual salvation. The men who stood in the pulpits of the state church could not adapt to this awakening, and so a free church was begun in Gräsmark. It called itself the Missionshuset, the mission house, and the Udman family joined them. Meeting in this white building, their services were filled then, as they are yet today, with the prayers and the preaching and the music of the common people.
It was in 1896 that Daniel Udman, now 51 years old, was forced by problems with his health to leave his post as a soldier. He moved his family high into the timber to this clearing, a farmstead called Bronnenden, where he and Kajsa lived the rest of their days. But he could not keep his offspring nearby. There were simply no jobs, and the market prices for farm products continued to slide. Young people could see but one answer: emigrate to America, where jobs were abundant and land was free, and there was even gold to be found in the hills and streams. Anna, the oldest daughter, left even before the move to Bronnenden. Then Hannah, Johann, and finally Gustav made their way south to Gothenburg, the seaport, where they booked passage on ocean-going ships and left their beloved Sweden never to come back. All in all, 1.5 million Swedes emigrated to America. One family in Udheden lost 14. So many left Värmland that this monument was eventually built in the shape of the province. The dedication at its base reads, quote, "To our families across the waters." They crossed the ocean with all its perils until they were welcomed by the sight of New York Harbor. Gustav arrived here in the summer of 1899. He was not quite 20 years old.
He went, as you might expect, to the state most like what he had left, Minnesota, where he found work as a cook in the lumber camps. He dropped the name Udman and reverted to the standard Scandinavian practice of forming a surname from one's father's name. He asked to be known here in America as Gust Danielson. He diligently saved his money so that after 3 years he was able to send a ticket back to his sweetheart, Caroline Nilsdotter, who came with her brother to America in the summer of 1902. They were married 2 years later and had 5 children of their own. Here is a picture of them in recent times, from left to right: Lily, Vernon, Ella, Theodore, Hazel, and seated is the aged mother Carrie, who, like her husband Gus, spoke often of her homeland, but was never able to return.
It was in 1910 that the news came from Sweden that there had been a death at Broninden. Daniel Udman had passed away at the age of 65. In the center of this old photo we see his widow, Kajsa, and at her right her one remaining son, the youngest, Karl Oskar. They buried Daniel Udman here in the common graves beside the Gräsmark Kyrka, and his wife as well in another 4 years. The next year, Karl Oskar sold Broninden to buy this farmhouse and acreage along Lake Rottenen. He named it Karlslund, and you can go and see him there today. A new house has now been built close to the old one, and if you come, all the relatives will gather for a smorgasbord, of course. Oskar Udman, the strong young man who stayed in Sweden to care for his parents and build his life close to his roots, is now in his 94th year. You will have to lean close and speak loudly for him to hear you, and you will have to help him get up from his chair, but you will find him alert and eager to share your friendship.
Jag vet inte, det blir jämt slut om det var att vi fick att vi hade gjort kanske. Det hade varit. Ja, men om det var bestämningen i kassan. Ja, det blir ont ibland.
If you are lucky, he may invite you to see his little stuga, a hideaway up in a clearing not far from Broninden. He will tell you all about the potatoes growing in the clearing, and will probably invite you inside for coffee and conversation. Oskar Udman has been a widower for more than 50 years now, but you can meet his 3 children, Anna on the left and Karl and Gustav on the right. Both of the sons live with their father. Karl is the oldest, a bachelor with sparkling eyes and quick mind, willing to answer your questions as long as you wish, in Swedish, of course.
Du, Ted, ja. Får jag tala om för dig hur det var för Gustav när han gick i skomakarlära i Udden. Det kanske inte han talade om för dig någon gång. Ja. Här i Sverige. Ja. Han skulle bli skomakare, vet du, som han blev. Ja. Och då sen var skomakare, alltså han var elev, man säger, eller gesäll hette på den tiden. Ja. Och mästare var han den som var lärare, vet du. Som man skulle lära för. Ja. Och den var så snår, vet du vad det är? Ja, jag vet vad det är. Sparsam eller sådär. Ja, snår och lite mer sparsam. Ja, det är det. Snår, is that stingy? Så Gustav fick så dåligt med mat där på detta ställe. Ja. Och det gick bra för honom så länge som Kajsa, alltså, och det bodde kvar i Udheden. Mm-hmm. Men sen när de flyttade Broninden så hade han inte råd dit som vi var fotograferade, vet du, och få någon mat. När han gjorde klister till skolgöringen, för det skulle ha det till klister in i skolan, vet du, fodret till klister. Och då blandade han alltid till detta klister utav rent vatten, och så var det ju vetemjöl. Och då passade han på och åt utav detta innan de använde till klister.
Gustav, shown here on the right, married about a dozen years ago and brought his new wife Edith to the farmstead. He's mechanically inclined. He was named for his uncle and our grandfather, Gus Danielson, and seems to have inherited his skill with his hands.
Driving south along the lakes and through the trees for 20 minutes or so, you will come to the village of Vestra Amtervik, where the youngest Udman child, Anna, lives with her husband, Bertil Pearson, on the left, and their son, Uno, on the right. Their home is a typical Swedish two-story, immaculate with large open windows, a second-floor balcony, and shining floors covered by long rugs woven on this loom in the basement. Outside are the very special friends called flowers. The watering each day is a ritual of quiet pleasure. The other notable appointment of the Pearson household is its food, whether it's rice pudding for breakfast, herring and potatoes for dinner, or coffee, bread, and cheese in the arbor that overlooks Lake Frickin, all blended together with lively conversation.
Anna, var har du varit?
Jag har inte sett att det är flowers.
Ja, vad slags blommor?
Ja.
Vad slags blommor?
Ja,
Är
här är liljan i dalen, ja.
fann du några?
Grannen tar.
Ja, vi har.
Ja,
Och du fick?
nej du, hon var inte inne. Hon var inte hemma.
Det är inte rätt att ta det hemma.
Nej. Nej, det är inte rätt. Och jag var gammal och det var så. Det var solen hemma. Ja, men jag vill inte knacka på för dörren var låst. Jag var löst. Man hade där inne. Men till morgon bitti kan jag nog få där. Herr Torsten. Har du varit i trädgården? Ja.
Ja, men jag gick och tog dem och så lämnade vi stan så kunde ingenting göras.
Nej då.
Men det vill inte vara rättvist förstås. Vad tror du?
Ja, vi har den i trädgården. Det är vilda blommor.
Vilda blommor.
Ja, men
Eller som är i trädgårdarna, det kan vi inte plocka.
vår granne har ju tagit hem sin trädgård. Det kanske vi gör också nästa gång när ni kommer, så kanske vi har det på varje jord.
Bertil Pearson is a teacher of grades 3 and 4 at the local school, the level at which English is introduced. His English capacity is excellent, much to the advantage of his wife's American relatives who come to visit. Uno is a custodian at the same school as well as at the nursing home where his mother works part-time. He also loves his new Saab and is preparing to be married someday when an apartment is finished in the upstairs of his parents' home to a young lady from Suna named Christina. One cannot spend time with the Pearsons or any of the family without being impressed by their serenity, their goodness, their industriousness, their settledness, their love for the land and its gifts, and their devotion to their Lord, who has seen them through good times and bad. They are hearty, honest people with whom it is a privilege to share our common roots.